Juraj Slafkovsky scored his second NHL goal over the weekend, while Shane Wright continues to be scratched for the Seattle Kraken. The WHL is the league to scout for the 2023 NHL Draft, and who's the better goal scorer, Connor Bedard or Matvei Michkov? All coming up on this first ever episode of Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome to our first ever edition of the Locked On NHL Prospects podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Hadi Kalakesh, and I'll be taking you on a journey through the scouting sphere every weekday while you get to work, grab some lunch, whatever you've got going on. If you like prospects, just put this on and I'll do the work for you. Now, I really hope you've chosen to make Locked On NHL Prospects your first listen of the day. If you haven't, I recommend it. It's always a good show. Now, for our first topic of the day, if you're watching this, you probably remember the big surprise of the 2022 NHL Draft, Juraj Slafkovsky going first overall to the Montreal Canadiens, with Shane Wright dropping all the way to fourth overall, despite most, if not all networks, pinning him as the first overall pick from the start of the year. Now, how's that looking so far? Well, Slafkovsky just returned from injury, played in his sixth game of the season, scored a second NHL goal, a one-timer from the right half wall on the power play, which was one of the only shifts he got on the power play itself. He played 10 minutes and 23 seconds in that game against the St. Louis Blues, which, by the way, was a 7-4 win for the Habs. So a really good performance overall. And now Slafkovsky's averaging about 11 minutes a night. Now he still has some habits that kind of make me wonder whether he's better suited for the NHL or better off playing the season in the AHL so far. We'll get to that in just a second. But meanwhile, Wright has been scratched for the third game in a row on Saturday. He's averaged 6 minutes and 51 seconds on the season when he does get in the lineup, and has one secondary assist in that time. What gives? Well, Dave Haxtell, I've watched a couple interviews. Dave Haxtell seems to be very much intent on developing consistent progress with Shane Wright. That's what he keeps mentioning in interviews when asked about Wright and his lack of playing time. Now, he doesn't really mention the specific things that he wants Wright to improve. There aren't specific areas. Now, what that leads me to believe is that they're expecting more from him out of practices, and they're expecting him to elevate his entire game. And that's something that usually happens with prospects. They often lack the high-end pace of play, the high-end pace pushing that you want at an NHL level. Their skill level's good, their processing's good, their understanding, their hockey sense, their vision might be good, but what's really missing in their case is just taking that entire package and elevating it to the NHL pace of play. Now, I'm guessing that's what they want from Wright, but there's no way to know because we aren't mentioning specifics on Dave Haxtell's side. Now, I talked about this with Erica L. Ayala, the wonderful host of our Locked On Kraken podcast. Wright won't necessarily be harmed too much by being scratched because the thing that Wright needs reps for, the thing that Wright needs 18, 20, 22, 23 minutes a night for is confidence, consistency in all three zones, high-end positioning, understanding of systems. All that stuff's already at an elite level with Shane Wright. It's not something that he's lacking. It's something that's very developed in his game. So in terms of his actual development on the ice, his improvement as a hockey player, I don't think he's going to be too harmed by the lack of ice time so far. I think what the Kraken are trying to do is find him good competition for his 9 games, so he can sort of be eased into the lineup. And then after 9 games, if they're playing him against weaker teams, playing him in favorable matchups, and he's still not panning out, then they'll probably send him down to the OHL. Again, his game's already mature, his hockey sense already high end, and those are the things that reps sort of favor or improve with time. So I'm not too worried in Wright's case. For me, a player like Juraj Slafkovsky would be much better off playing at a lower level, playing 18, 19, 20 minutes a night, because him and Shane Wright are completely different players with completely different skill sets. For me, this is why it's so important to have individualized development plans. And I talked about this with Erica as well. Every player is inherently different. They won't have the same objectives. They won't have the same improvements required. In Slafkovsky's case, he is a physical specimen, 6'4", 238 pounds. He's 18 years old. He has a lot of skill. He's a good shooter, a good passer. He's got a lot of pace. He's got a lot of strength to his game. What's lacking in his case is that high-end hockey sense that Shane Wright already has. And that for me is why it's so important to see him, for example, go down to Laval in the AHL and play 18, 19, 20 minutes a night, get as many reps as possible. Because right now, what you're seeing with Shane Wright is he's spending maybe 10 or 15 real-time minutes in between his shifts because he's playing so little when he does get in the lineup. So what you're seeing with him is there's a lot of time between those shifts, and there's not enough consistency in his shifts to build momentum to sort of go out of a shift and go into the next one with some steam running from the last one. That's what's lacking right now. If Slafkovsky starts to see the same sort of treatment, then it's going to hinder his ability to develop his hockey sense a lot. Because again, hockey sense is often developed with reps. So that's why I would vouch more for Slafkovsky than for Shane Wright to go down a level and dominate and play as much as possible. Play play a minute and a half on each power play. Play every other shift so that he ends every game with as many reps as possible to develop the little habits that'll improve his game. For example, hockey sense, a good sort of a good indicator of hockey sense would be scanning. Because if you're scanning, you're more likely to be making good decisions because you're creating a mental map of your surroundings. Slafkovsky doesn't have those high-end scanning habits that Shane Wright does. Wright is always analyzing. Wright is always checking his surroundings. Slafkovsky doesn't often do that. He plays the game and goes to where the puck is. So for me, if you want to develop scanning habits, I don't think the NHL is the right place for that because the NHL is very instinctual. In the AHL, you have more opportunities to check your shoulders, make sure your surroundings are sort of taken into consideration when making decisions. So I think Slafkovsky would be better off in that position, despite the fact that he's playing really well so far for the Habs. I think the best thing for his long-term development would be to spend the year in the AHL and develop his game slowly. Another thing that Slafkovsky does that sort of indicates to me that he's probably better off in the minors is he crowds the short side a lot. So what that means is he's going to gravitate towards the puck, towards where the puck is at all times. And what that does is it forces his teammates to reevaluate their routes, to readjust, and sort of adapt their play to him rather than have him play the system, play his position, and do the right things at the right times on the ice. So that creates a lot of havoc on the side of the puck because when he does gravitate towards that puck, he's actually dragging two other players towards him. And what that does is it sort of crowds that side of the ice and makes it more difficult to reach a teammate on the weak side. It makes it more difficult to break out the puck, to create transition plays, passing plays in transition that will be sort of connective and lead to more offensive chances. Now, so far, he's gotten away with it because he plays with a couple guys that are very solid in terms of finding open ice and playing that dump and chase style, so they don't have a problem dumping the puck in and creating rushes. He's played with Michael Pizzetta, with Jake Evans. He played a couple shifts with Yoel Armia. So he's getting reps in with players that are sort of used to that. But if he wants to become a high-end top six player, he needs to stop crowding the short side. And I think the best place for him to learn that is where he can make mistakes and not have it affect the team, not have it affect his ice time. And in a situation where there's not as much pressure as in the NHL. And I think that is what he needs right now. Meanwhile, Shane Wright, again, needs the reps for the confidence, and that's it. It's not a matter of developing his game. He's already pretty solid in that sense. So they're two different players with two different objectives. For me, that's why I'd rather see Wright in the NHL than Slafkovsky. But at the end of the day, Slafkovsky right now is performing. Wright's not even in the lineup. It might just be a coaching decision, but there might be something more profound to it where Wright isn't as impressive so far. But regardless, before we head into our next discussion about why the NHL's where the talent's at this season, I just want to give you a quick word from our sponsors. First off, I want to talk to you about SimpliSafe. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen SimpliSafe home security to protect their home. If you got that many people on board, you're definitely doing something right. SimpliSafe's priority is your safety. They protect you using cutting-edge security tech powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who've always got your back. I love what SimpliSafe has to offer. From crystal clear HD live stream of your security cameras to full control of your system from your phone with their app, and smarter ways to detect real break-ins so you aren't pestered with false alarms while you're going going about your workday. They've got sensors for everything from burglaries to fires to floods and other threats to your home. They've really got you covered. You can customize your perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl. You can save 20% on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl to learn more. Again, that's simplysafe.com/lockedonnhl. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. And we're back to Locked On NHL Prospects. Again, I'm Hadi Kalakesh, and I'm very glad to have you here. Before we talk about the WHL's ridiculous pool of talent, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comment section who your favorite prospect is. I'll swing by and write you a little bite-sized report on him. So for the WHL, every year, one specific league seems to have, or country sometimes, seems to have the upper hand in terms of top-end talent. In 2022 was the year of the Slovaks with Juraj Slafkovsky, Simon Nemec, Filip Mesar, and Adam Sikora, who were doing really well in Slovakia. In 2021, you had 4 University of Michigan prospects in the top 5. You had Owen Power, who went first, Matty Beniers, who went second, Luke Hughes, and then Ken Johnson, that rounded out the top 5 there. This year is the year of the dub. It's unheard of what's going on right now. They've got 9 WHL prospects to my count that are almost definitely going in the first round. With the USHL growing as a development system, with Europe churning out more and more top-end prospects every year, it's unheard of. Usually you'll have 4 or 5 from the WHL, another 4 or 5 from the OHL, and a couple from the QMJHL. This year, it's pure dominance. I'd say there's 5 of them that are almost definitely top 15 picks, which again, unheard of. Going through the list, I'll start with a name that you might have heard of, a young guy called Connor Bedard, center for the Regina Pats. He leads the WHL in points right now with 10 goals and 12 assists for 22 points in 13 games. In a word, this is a generational prospect. Elite shooter, elite playmaker, tremendous skater, high-end vision. He manages the pace of the game like no one else in this draft. He's almost always perfectly positioned. He's a natural leader. I mean, what else do you want? For me, Connor Bedard is the first overall pick in this draft. There's very little doubt about it. It's pretty clear at this point. There's no one that really holds a candle to him. I mean, if your team's tanking, they're probably tanking for Connor Bedard. I mean, there's a couple of very good consolation prizes, Matvei Michkov, Adam Fantilli, Leo Carlson, but if your team's tanking, they're tanking for Bedard. Make no mistake about it. So that's for Bedard. After that's when it gets interesting, actually, because you've got Zach Benson, 16 points in 13 games played. His hockey sense is through the roof. I mean, among this draft class, I'd say only Bedard and maybe perhaps Leo Carlson hold a candle to him in terms of hockey sense. It's high end. He anticipates play super well, understands his surroundings. He's got great vision. He scans. He has all the little habits that translate to really, really good hockey sense, off puck positioning, all that good stuff. On top of that, he's got really sound puck skills. He can stick handle in the phone booth. He's got great playmaking, an underrated shot, a very decent shot that can catch goalies by surprise. He's good along the boards. He's good in open ice. He's involved in all 3 zone. He was the best player on the Winnipeg Ice last year as a 16, 17-year-old playing on the same team as Matt Savoy and Connor Geekie, who went really high in last year's draft. So that should be telling of the type of player you could get here. For me, he's my 5th overall pick. And again, I will be premiering my top 32 tomorrow morning on the same channel. Tune in. It's going to be a great show. I'll go through the top 32, why I have this player above that player, and sort of go through that. So I'll be breaking down who goes where, but I'll just give you a rundown of these WHL players that I've got in the top 15 and tell you where they are. Brayden Yager is next, and Yager for me is in the conversation with Zach Benson. He's that good. He's one of the best goal scorers in the dub after Connor Bedard, of course. He's got a tremendous release, and his off-puck positioning really manages a lot of his game, both on and off the puck, rather offensively or defensively. His off-puck positioning is really solid. It helps him prevent scoring chances in his defensive end, and it helps him, pad his stats offensively. When he gets in the offensive zone, he has an uncanny ability to find space off the puck, to find those little pockets of space, and then his release is so quick and so accurate that there's very little that netminders can do to stop him once he gets in those areas. Last year, Brayden Yager was second on the Moose Jaw Warriors as a, again, 16, 17-year-old with 34 goals in 63 games. Again, this is a player who was in his draft minus 1 year. So the year before he was drafted, and he was in the lead for his team for scoring. He was 1 goal behind Jagger Firkus, who to me was probably the best goal scorer out of last year's draft. To me, Jagger Firkus, the Seattle Kraken got a great pickup there. I mean, to get him at 34th overall, for me, he had the best release, the best shot in the draft. So for Yager to be just behind him when he's a full year younger, really, really astounding. For me, this is a player who's on top of being an incredible goal scorer. He's dynamic, he's elusive, he's smart. He has to work on his skating a tiny bit, but it doesn't limit him as much. Moving on, you've got Andrew Cristall, a left wing of the Kelowna Rockets. He is one of the most dynamic players in this class. His handling skills are outstanding. He can receive pucks in motion flawlessly. It's not even an effort for him. He's a tremendous skater, very, very elusive, very agile, builds up speed really well. On top of that, he's got tremendous anticipation, tremendous processing. It's quick, it's accurate, it's effortless for him. He has tons of fun, and he's probably going to go later than he should. So far, a lot of websites, a lot of scouting teams have him outside of the top 20, in the 22nd, 23rd type of range. For me, Andrew Cristall is my 10th overall pick. He's that good. So I would be extremely surprised to see him go in the top 10. Maybe he skyrockets up people's rankings once they realize how incredibly fun and good he is. But odds are that he's going to go later than he should. So he would be a great pickup for a middle-of-the-pack team looking for a potential top-line scorer. Now, he needs to work on his defensive end, but when you're that good offensively, I honestly wouldn't worry too much about it. This is a player who's got enough offensive skill to drive a line and do a great job, both in terms of playmaking and goal scoring for an NHL team one day. After Andrew Cristall, I'll name the one defenseman I have in my top 15, and for me, the best defenseman in this draft class, and that's Caden Price. No, it's not Cam Allen. A lot of networks seem to have Cam Allen in the top 10. For me, you flip those around if you're going to. Price he's a left-handed defenseman, right? So he shoots left. That might bump him down the line, and because Cam Allen is right-handed, he might go first. But for me, Price is head and shoulders above Cam Allen, especially the way Allen's been playing recently in the OHL. I've seen a couple games where he was outright awful. So it's very difficult for me to justify putting Allen above Price other than handedness. And to me, I don't look at that too much. For me, Caden Price, best D-man in this class. He's fluid. His skating is near flawless. It's excellent. He can get around the ice effortlessly, and he's agile. He can receive pucks in his pocket while skating. He makes plays at a high pace. He's composed. His composure's through the roof. He's got a high panic threshold. He can handle a lot of offensive pressure before throwing pucks up the boards or panicking or stuff like that, which you'll see in other prospects' games, which needs to be ironed out. For him, the game's crystal clear to him when he's skating up the ice with possession. He's smart. He makes good decisions under pressure as well. He defends proactively, so he prevents chances by dominating the puck and having his team almost always have possession of the puck rather than blocking shots at all times. I've mentioned this a couple times on my Twitter account. It's linked down below if you're watching on YouTube. It's going to be in the description if you're watching audio only. When you're blocking shots, it's usually because you're doing something to make sure that the other team has the puck. If you're leading the league in blocked shots, to me, that's not a good thing, because that means that you're giving up possession in easy ways. And, you know, if you're on the ice for that many shot attempts against, you're either contributing to that in some way or you're not preventing it, which isn't a good thing. What's promising about Caden Price is that he drives possession so well that he doesn't really need to defend in his own zone or be that good, in his own zone, because the puck is so rarely there. Now, obviously, if he can polish that and make it a good thing so that he spends even less time in his own zone and gets the puck out of there as quickly as possible, that's great. But I wouldn't be concerned too much with Caden Price's play. The other four who round out the top 32 are Riley Heidt, and Cohen Zemer, who both play for Prince George. Nate Danielson, who plays for the Brandon Wheat Kings, and Lucas Dragicevic, who's the only other WHL defenseman in the top 32, is actually one of only 4 defensemen to have in the top 32. So if your team's looking for a D-man, this year is probably not the year to go for one in the top 32. Again, I'll be premiering my top 32 tomorrow morning for your first listen of the day, so tune in then. Moving on, I'll break down the difference between Connor Bedard and Matvei Michkov's goal-scoring abilities and sort of comparing them after these messages from our sponsors. All right, so the big debate, one that'll probably follow these two prospects throughout their careers and likely won't die off until way after they've both retired. Who's the better goal scorer, Connor Bedard or Matvei Michkov? I'll preface this by saying that they're both very different. Their goals often look nothing alike. I'll start with Connor Bedard, for example. So Connor Bedard, let's start with his track record so far. So he scored 51 goals in 62 games as a 16-year-old in the WHL. The season before, his exceptional status year, the first exceptional status player in WHL history. He scored 12 goals in 15 games. Remember, again, this was a year that was shortened by COVID all over the map. He was loaned out to a junior team in Sweden, played pretty well there, but when he came back to the dub after that, 12 goals in 15 games as a 15-year-old. So this is a player with a long-standing track record of scoring above his level easily. Now, Bedard is a much more traditional scorer than Matvei Michkov. He scores off carries a lot. So he'll carry the puck into the offensive zone, challenge defensemen one-on-one, and find a way to shoot through them. He's got a curl and drag release that's absolutely ridiculous. He can shoot off his outside edges extremely easily. He accesses his outside edges through his shots almost effortlessly. He reminds me more of Austin Matthews if we're comparing players. And this is not to say that Bedard is going to score as many goals as Austin Matthews and win Rocket Richard trophies. There's no way to guarantee that. He's still very young. But stylistically, if I were to give him an NHL comparable in terms of his goal scoring ability, it would be Austin Matthews. Now, because there's an NHL example of how that's something that works at the NHL level, it makes Bedard's goal scoring a lot more projectable, a lot more easy to project at the next level. He's dynamic and smart on top of it, which makes him more likely to work out for him at the NHL level. So if between the two, you were to ask me which one is more likely to score 50 goals a season on average, I would say it's Connor Bedard, because it's more projectable, because it's more likely that he'll get to the NHL level and continue to do what he does. Now, moving on to Matvei Michkov, let's look at his track record. 35 goals in 50 games in the MHL as a 15, 16-year-old. The MHL is the Russian Junior League, so that's 17 to 20, 21-year-olds against which he's playing. Again, 35 goals in 50 games as a 15 and 16-year-old in that league. The next season, he upped that to 22 goals in 22 games, so a goal per game at the MHL level last season. And then this season, he hasn't even played a single game in the MHL. He's playing in the VHL, which is Russia's second division of professional men's hockey. And he's got 6 goals in 6 games so far as a 17-year-old. If you go before that, you look at his Hlinka Gretzky Cup last season, 8 goals in 5 games. And he scores, his goal scoring it's weird. It's unlike anything I've ever seen in the NHL, but clearly it works. He's like one of those annoying NHL 22 players who score like 1 billion goals from 5 feet around the net because they have that close quarters zone ability. You know what I mean? Like he'll sneak pucks over pads and under gloves. He'll tuck them in the weirdest ways, and it's all going in. And he also has an insane amount of versatility to a shot from mid-range. He can score off both feet. He can score off balance effortlessly. He'll shoot from the weirdest angles and score. I've seen him score from the goal line, near the boards, and just put it top corner. It's his goal scoring, in a word, is weird. I've never seen anything like it. Another thing I really like about Matvei Michkov that I think is superior to Bedard is his off-puck movement. He's a much more sneaky player. He'll find pockets of space like no one else in this draft. I mentioned that when I was talking about Brayden Yager's off-puck positioning. I think Michkov has tremendous off-puck positioning, and you'll get punished so easily against him because of his ability to score in tight almost effortlessly and consistently. He just finds those little holes through netminders and sneaks pucks through. I mean, if you give him an inch of space, he'll make you pay. There's nothing you can do. Uh, and especially around the net, it's insane the amount of times that you blink and he's got the puck. He's 5 feet from your netminder and you're screwed. There's just nothing you can do. So that's the difference mainly between the two. For me, if I were to choose one of these two prospects, Connor Bedard or Matvei Michkov, if I were to choose one that is more likely to score 70 goals in a season, that's Matvei Michkov. Bedard more likely to score 50 on average every season. But if one of these two is going to score 70 in his career, for me it's Matvei Michkov. So that's a conclusion for me. Is Bedard's goals are a lot more projectable, but the potential for Michkov's goal scoring is record-breaking level good. And if teams are willing to wait the 3 years that it'll take for his contract to expire in Russia, because he's signed until 2026, the end of the 2026 season, if teams are willing to wait 3 years for him to develop in Russia and then bring him over to North America when he's done with that contract, you might have a Hall of Fame goal scorer on your hands. And I know it's early to say this, but the track record speaks for itself. This is a player who scored goals at every level almost effortlessly. When he's gotten the ice time, I mean, there have been moments he's played in the KHL last year as a 16, 17-year-old, and he would play maybe 6, 7, 8 minutes a night at most. And you know how the KHL is with, if you know anything about prospects, you know that the KHL is the worst league for prospects. Danila Yurov, who was drafted in the first round last year, there were games where he was dressed but played 0 minutes and 0 seconds in those games to be earning 6, 7, or 8 minutes a night. The year before his draft year, that's astounding. And he scored, I think, 2 goals and 3 assists in 12 games with that ridiculously low ice time. I wouldn't worry about Michkov scoring. And again, it's such a weird way to score goals, but it works so well for him. It's he might just revolutionize the way goals are scored at the NHL level. We'll see, because again, there's the Russian aspect of having to wait 3 years for a prospect that good to come over. He might slip behind Adam Fantilli and Leo Carlsson. He might slip outside of the top 5. There's no way to know. But for me, if any prospect is going to score 70 goals in this draft class, it's going to be Matvei Michkov. And that concludes our first ever episode of Locked On NHL Prospects. Thanks so much for listening along. Remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Follow us along. You can follow me on Twitter using my handle down below. And I'll see you tomorrow morning as, again, I premiere my top 32 for you and give you little prospect reports on each of them. See you next time.